Welcome back to Rising Tales and Talks. I am Seraphina Stardust. Today, we're going to go on to the Tales end of this channel. I had actually been working on something the last couple of days as far as fictional writing goes, and we're going to see how it plays out, as this is one of very many rewrites for a book that has I haven't figured out the exact direction I want to go, so this is what I was telling you in my introduction video, where I've rewritten this like 100 million, well, like 6 times. And at this point, I've actually changed character names. And so there's no chapter title, there's no book title. This is just what I've been working on. And I want to see how this goes with everybody. Even if there's no true direction I'm going yet, this is all free writing. So I'm going to actually read from the paper. So I will do my best to interact with you all, but bear in mind I will be reciting from paper. So this is in third point of view, and we're starting with my main female heroine, Aveline. Lady Aveline, a young female voice called out in the distance. Lady Aveline, are you in the garden? The female called again. In the garden sat a young woman against a giant oak tree with a leather-bound book in hand. Her long silver hair was loose and fell to the sides of her face, like horse blinders, allowing the woman to focus on what was directly in front of her amethyst eyes instead of everything around her as well. Aveline was so engrossed in her book she didn't hear the girl that was calling her even when she was huffing, out of breath, in front of her, disgruntled by the effort she just went through to locate her. So, the assassin was cursed. But what made them think that after so many years that it could still be broken when there was no proof? Aveline mumbled to herself, lost in the story. She had been following this series for years. There were so many plot twists that it kept her on the edge of her seat and unable to wait for the next book in the series. This was the most recent book, and it was finally confirmed that the assassin that was always around in the shadows had a history with her other favorite character. And at the moment, they were on opposite sides of this conflict that had been happening in the last couple of books. And now, a curse. Miss Aveline, the girl breathlessly yelled at Aveline. This startled Aveline from what she was reading and looked up, swiping her silver hair out of her face to see who had seemingly snuck up on her. It was one of her family's servant girls. This one had freckles all over her face with vibrant red hair up in a plait, and a servant's uniform slightly wrinkled from searching the grounds for her. Heather, what happened to you? Aveline asked innocently, unaware that she was the cause of the girl's look of dishevelment. Heather stood up straight and took a deep breath, attempting to keep the exasperation off her face and out of her voice. Lady Aveline, do you have any idea what time it is? Heather looked at Aveline intently, knowing that she had to keep her young mistress engaged in the conversation, else lose her back to the world of fantasy she loved to escape to. Aveline wasn't too sure about the time. She had come out to the garden right after the sun rose to get some reading done, and looked up at the sky to discern the color of the sky would help her. But as she stared at the sky, Her mind was brought back to the assassin in the book she had been reading. It was a part of a larger series she was working on in her spare time, and it had just been discovered that the assassin was actually the love interest to the main character, but was cursed. But until the main character, Lady Aveline! Heather startled her again, and Aveline looked down from the sky at Heather. Heather, when did you get here? Aveline asked and looked at her timekeeping device on her wrist. Lady Aveline, where is your head today? I've been here. Heather began becoming frustrated. She was trying to stay as professional as possible, but days like today tested her patience. Shoot! Aveline cried out, startling Heather, causing the young girl to flinch. Aveline quickly got up off the grass and placed a bookmark into her book. Sorry, Heather. I don't have time to chat. I'm going to be late, Aveline said as she quickly dashed off, silver hair flying behind her like a cape. This time, Heather did let her exasperation show. Aveline, that's why I was looking for you in the first place, she sighed, and allowed her posture to slouch for a moment before taking a deep breath and following Evelyn at a leisurely pace. Evelyn, after a while, didn't hear Heather behind her and slowed down as she got closer to the castle. It was too beautiful of a day, and her book, Shadowed Hearts, was just begging for her to continue where she left off. But she knew she couldn't do that. So she took solace in her thoughts as she gazed at the beauty of the garden she loved to be in every free moment she had with a book. She remembered when she found Book 1, Shadows of Fate. It was the first book that didn't have a female character falling head over heels at the first man that gave her some attention. It still hadn't revealed who Seraphina's family was, as the whole story revolved around her work for the Council of Shadows, who was supposed to be the dark secret of the royal family. But the book had never had Seraphina the assassin meet the prince until now, only Hera, the young woman. It was at this thought Aveline walked into the grand hall and immediately ran into someone whom she thought was a guard. But when she looked up, there was no one there. She began to apologize. Confused and stunned, she slowly walked further in, wondering what had caused her to stop. Her magic sense had picked up something ever so faint, but she couldn't place it. And then, whatever it was gone. And before she took a step to continue on her way to the dressing room to meet the seamstresses, she noticed a tapestry faintly moving in this grand hall, but there was no breeze. A confused look flashed across her eyes, and she carefully began to move towards it. It was beautiful. It had the most fantastical scenery on it, a forest full of magical creatures from myth. There were even wyverns and dragons and fae, and then there were heroes and villains scattered all throughout the landscape. But before she got within 2 steps, she felt a hand on her shoulder, distracting her from her thoughts. Lady Aveline! It was Heather. Aveline was confused as the girl's voice hit her ear. She was sure she had only been standing in the grand hall for no more than maybe a moment or two. And Heather, she knew, hadn't been close by when she had entered this hall. She was 100% certain of that. Heather? She asked, ever so hesitantly, as she allowed herself to break her gaze from the tapestry and look to the servant. When Aveline observed her, though, it seemed like she had been there a lot longer trying to get her attention. And Aveline felt stiff, which was odd. My lady, are you all right? Heather asked hesitantly. Confusion, clear as day, crossed Aveline's eyes at that question. She was pretty sure she was all right, but it was this thought that brought her gaze back to the beautiful tapestry she had been looking at, just to find it gone. Okay, now that was weird. I was just... Aveline shook her head and turned fully to Heather. I'm fine, Heather. Let's get going. And with that, Aveline put the episode out of her mind and continued on. Heather looked on as her lady continued walking towards where the seamstresses were located for the dress fitting, and then back at the wall where nothing was at. Her magic sense hadn't sensed anything, and was confused, but she couldn't do anything about it now, and quickly rushed to keep up with Aveline. Mystery Observer. The grand hall that Aveline had just left was a cavernous expanse of marble and gold, a testament to centuries of wealth and power. Its vastness seemed to swallow the ambient noise, creating a pocket of near silence, where the only sound was the receding echo of Aveline's and Heather's footsteps. From the shadows, someone had been watching Aveline since she had entered the hall, which they hadn't been expecting at the time. So they watched everything the young lady did since entering. She had run into them, which stunned them for the briefest moment, but they had disappeared before Aveline could even apologize. Aveline, though, had become like a beacon of quiet strength in this area, as they put a small spell on this room so that all the other humans would leave. And it intrigued them that she had walked right into the hall, and so they watched on. Aveline, to the observer, stood out in the opulence of the hall, her presence a beacon of quiet strength, and was that longing they felt radiating from the girl. Intriguing. A smirk appeared on their eyes as they noted the princess's practical attire, which was elegant, a tailored ensemble that defied the traditional society norms and norms of her rank. The fitted blouse she wore was a deep violet, accentuating her curves and slender form, and dark trousers that allowed for the freedom of movement. Unlike the heavy gowns and skirts that Aveline reserved only for formal occasions, this outfit spoke to the observer of a desire for autonomy and practicality, traits they thought that could prove both intriguing and problematic depending on future plans. They watched as she began to walk until she noticed a tapestry on the wall that was full of mythical creatures, heroes, and villains. She noticed the tapestry when it made some faint movements, and she'd been almost halfway through the room at that time. The observer watched as she studied the tapestry. They wondered what was going through her mind. But it was at this time they noticed Heather entering, and so they sent their magic toward her carefully to silence her. Aveline was the current mystery to unravel, and Aveline being disturbed wasn't ideal. Hesitantly, they watched as Aveline started to make small steps towards the tapestry, when Heather noticed and began to rush to Aveline's side. Aveline's long silver hair was still flowing freely, and whatever force had been moving the tapestry slightly touched her silver hair as well, making her hair look like a flowing waterfall of moonlight, contrasting strikingly with her amethyst eyes. But then, something unusual happened. As Aveline's fingers twitched, a kitsune that hadn't originally been in the tapestry appeared, and Aveline was preoccupied watching all the other characters move and hadn't noticed the kitsune newly venture in. But the observer was uncertain whether the kitsune truly had or had not caught the princess's eyes yet. But time seemed to stretch, the moments suspended in a delicate balance. As Heather was rushing ever closer to Aveline, she was attempting to call out to Aveline to no avail due to the silence spell the observer had put on her when she entered the room. The mythical fox, back on the tapestry, was obsidian colored and had multiple tails, and it dashed between all the heroes and villains as if playing some sort of game only it knew it was playing. And interest really sharpened their eyes now. The kitsune were a symbol, but it had also been known at one point for their transformation and trickery, and had to consider what this change in the tapestry would mean for the long term. Did the princess have what they hypothesized she did? Or was this just a coincidence? But it was by now Heather had broken Aveline out of the trance and the tapestry faded out, and they sighed as they watched Heather get Aveline get back on track for the dress fitting. When the girls had disappeared, it was only then that the observer left the shadows, pulling a hood up to hide their hair and other conspicuous features. But their eyes showed amusement and intrigue at all they had just experienced. And after one more glance at the wall, they decisively left the hall, dropping the spell that was preventing all others from entering this room. So, what did you guys think? I know it was very crude, very rough drafty, first drafty, and there's probably a lot of room for improvement, but what did you all think? Let me know your comments, ideas, other things. I looked at all different sorts of my books and stuff that I read, anime I watch, manga, for inspiration for things that I could utilize. Seeing if I can find things that aren't overly used, things that would make sense in my world. And before I leave, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell if you want to hear more of my writings, because I still have about 300-ish chapters that I can easily post, where you can meet my characters Odessa and Crown Prince Xander. So again, thank you for joining me on my channel, Rising Tales and Talks. I am Seraphina Stardust, and I hope to see you again in the future. Bye.